last month, this past July, I just returned from my 47th trip to Egypt. 47 trips over the course of 31 years. And of those trips, I'm now realizing I'm more mentally equipped to understand why I'm there now, why I've been going all these years, what's been drawing me there. And that main draw is the excavation of a tomb that we're currently working on. I'm so pleased to see two sisters who were part of our excavation team last year. Sister Theodora, Sister Ari, who worked with us last year. And stand up, give the sisters a hand. Let's acknowledge the sisters for willing to be a part of the process to help us rewrite our history. And one thing that I will acknowledge, because I'm with family and I can be truthful when I'm with family, that most of the support for what I'm doing and the work that we have done up to now has come from the sisters. So brothers, that's your call to step up. It's the sisters who saved the funds and traveled to Kimber with us. I've been doing study tours to Egypt since 1987. The majority of people who go to Kimber with us are sisters. We've been leading excavation missions to Egypt for the last 3 years. The majority of people who participate in the excavation mission are sisters, because they have the compassion, a deep desire to want to know the information. They have the wherewithal to save their money and to come to be a part of this important process. And we need more brothers to be a part of the mix. We need more brothers to step up and start doing the work necessary to help uncover our history. This is a family affair, and we need to balance out the family. But the project that we're working on now is the excavation, conservation, and restoration of a 25th dynasty tomb of a priest by the name of Karakhamun. And the project is named in honor of Dr. Asa G. Hilliard. It's referred to as the Asa Restoration Project, which is dedicated to restoring the tomb of Karakhamun and preserving the legacy of Dr. Asa G. Hilliard III. Dr. Hilliard, for those of you who have read my first book from the Browder file, Dr. Hilliard was the person who wrote the introduction to that book. Dr. Hilliard was an educational psychologist, he was a historian, he was an incredible human being, a master teacher, a master scholar, and he passed in Egypt on August 13th, 2007, while we were attending the ASCAC conference, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization. Dr. Hilliard gave his last lecture on this earthly plane on August the 13th and fell ill 2 days later and died at a hospital in Cairo. So his sudden death came as a shock to people around the world. And in honor of his memory, we decided to name this project in his name, so that we can do our job to ensure that the world knows of him, knows his legacy, and continues to work to raise African consciousness. So, I want to start by giving you a quote by Sheikh Diop. Diop said that the history of Black Africa will remain suspended in air and cannot be written correctly until African historians dare to connect it with the history of Egypt. Now, this is an important reality because, contrary to what many of us have been taught, Egypt is in Africa. But the majority of people who have been telling the story of these African people have been non-Africans, Europeans, and they have convinced us that Egypt is somewhere in the Middle East, a place that essentially was created from the imaginings of a European, a British. Actually, it was an American journalist who created the term Middle East in the early 1900s. So this term has been used to literally snatch Egypt out of Northeast Africa and place it in this nebulous region so that others can lay claim to its heritage. But Sheikh Diop, one of the most significant Egyptian scholars in history, African or European, was responsible for giving us a melanin dosage test, which he was able to identify the amount of melanin in the skin of mummies in order to prove that they were African. He was able to show linguistic and cultural connections between Africans in the Nile Valley and Africans from West Africa, where he was from, Senegal. He was also able to show a continued effort on the part of European historians and European Egyptologists to minimize and deny the African connection to ancient Egypt. So we acknowledge the work of Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop for being a pioneer in helping to raise the consciousness of African people and daring to connect ancient Egypt to the continent of Africa. Now, just to reinforce the fact that all of us have been brainwashed, to quote the title of Tom Morell's first book, Brainwash, Challenging the Myth of Black Inferiority. All of us have been brainwashed. All of us have been miseducated in the educational systems of the United States of America, and consequently, we don't know who we are. We don't know our history. We don't know our story. And I just want to prove that point by sharing with you a quote that says, essentially, there is nothing new in the world except the history you don't know. So you study history, you study your story, you study other people's story, so that you can begin to understand how these stories correlate, how they clash, and more specifically, so that you can find out your proper place in the world. So to prove my point, I want to ask you a series of questions. Give you a brief quiz just so that we can evaluate where we are and move forward in that evaluation. What is the name of this building? What is the name of this building?
The Giza Pyramid and the Sphinx.
Wait, hold on, sister, don't jump ahead. We ask you one question. Let's do it one step at a time. What is the name of that building? One word, please.
Giza.
What is the name of that building? What is that building?
Pyramid.
Pyramid. It's not complicated. It's not complicated. We want to get it. It's a pyramid. What is the name of this statue?
Sphinx.
All right. Where are these two objects currently found? All right, very good. Now, for everyone who wanted to get an A, in hopes of answering these questions correctly, I want you to know that you failed miserably. But you proved the point by demonstrating that you, like everyone in this room, have been the product of miseducation. The word pyramid, the words pyramid, Sphinx, and Egypt are all Greek words. And Greece, as a nation, did not come into existence until at least 2,500 years after these structures were created. So the question then for us, as we attempt to expand our minds, broaden our minds, is to find out what the original names for these objects in this land was. If you don't know that, then you're lost. When you were born, your parents gave you a name. When you got older, your parents told you where you lived, gave you an address, gave you a telephone number. If you don't know those things, how can you find your way home? How can you identify yourself? How can you protect that which is yours if you don't even know that it's yours? So what Sheikh Anta Diop encouraged us to do is to look at African history, African culture through African eyes, and to reclaim our African minds. So the word pyramid is a Greek word which means little flat cake, like a pancake. Does that look like a little flat cake to you? The original word for that structure is mir. The word mir means the place of ascension. It is a structure that was built over tombs that was created as a vehicle for the souls of the deceased buried beneath these structures to ascend into heavens so that they can be reborn. Sphinx is a Greek word which means to strangle or to hold. The original name for that structure is Maquette, which means Peru on the horizon. I could do a 2-hour lecture just about this structure itself. Its history, its culture, and its meaning to us. Egypt is a word that the Greeks used to describe one temple in a northern city in the country. And they ultimately gave that name of that one temple to the entire land. The original name for the land is Kemet. Kemet means the nation of the black people, not the black soil, as National Geographic would want you to believe. So the people created this culture identified themselves as black people. And everything they created was a reflection of their black African consciousness. So what we know about Kemet is that Kemet was the first nation. It was also a nation of many firsts. Kemet is the oldest documented civilization in existence. People of Kemet were responsible for giving us the first calendar, 365 and a quarter days. They were responsible for giving us the alphabet. The alphabet that we use today in a slightly modified form was created by Africans in the Nile Valley over 6,000 years ago. They created the first government with a ruling body. They created a first system of civil servants who administered this government. They were the first nation with a middle class. Architects, engineers, teachers, healers. They were responsible for creating monuments and structures thousands of years ago, which defied the imaginations of contemporary architects and engineers. These are African people. But once we study this history through African eyes, and what we begin to realize is the significance of this culture. One of the things that Dr. Hilliard taught quite frequently on his study towards Egypt was that he divided Kemet into 4 golden ages. First golden age was when all of the great mir were built. It was during the dynasties 3 through 6. The second golden age was when all of the great literature of Kemet, the great spiritual texts, great wisdom texts of Kemet were written during the 11th and 12th dynasties. The third golden age is the 18th and 19th dynasty, and all the great temples and monuments that millions of people flock to Egypt today to see were built during the time of the New Kingdom. And then the fourth and final golden age is the 25th dynasty, when Africans from Kush, or modern-day Sudan, came north into their ancestral homeland to rescue the land of their forefathers and foremothers from Libyan invaders, Assyrian invaders, and they then set about the business of restoring their ancestral homeland. Those were their exact words. They came into Kemet to restore the land of their ancestors. And so what's important, what Diop helped us to understand, is that there was very little difference between, phenotypical difference between the Kemites and the Kushites. Here we see